Welcome to Chai with Ping. This is Ping Robert, and in this podcast, we will cover a range of different topics from culture, languages, and underrepresented stories. Join me with a cup of chai and listen to these stories. Hi everyone, welcome to Chai with Ping. Today we have a very special guest. She just graduated from college this year, so woohoo for a class of 2020. And we met at church, and I am so attracted by her character and personality. She's great with teenagers, and she's gonna be a teacher very soon. And she just has a lot of fun and interesting experience across in the US and in China. So today we're gonna welcome our very special guest, Katelyn. Hi, Katelyn.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good. First of all, congratulations. How do you feel?
Very, very glad to be done. It was a lot of hard work, especially these past 8 weeks trying to do everything from home. But I collapsed across the finish line, but I crossed the finish line.
Yes, and that's the good thing. That's what matters the most. You graduate from college. So today we're gonna talk mainly about two topics. One is that you actually spent 1 year in Guangzhou, China. So we're gonna talk about that. And the second piece is the language learning, because you are a Mandarin student, right? And then I think that's something related to your future choices of career and your major in college. So that will be very interesting for us to dive in. So let me just start with the first question. In what occasion you went to Guangzhou?
Well, I had always thought the idea of being a ESL teacher overseas, like it was kind of a dream I had, but I didn't really know if it was a good idea because I had never done it before. And so I was in my world geography class freshman year, and the professor talked about this school that his daughter had started in Guangzhou and that they were looking for interns. And I was like, I could do that. So I asked him about it, filled out the application, and then within 2 weeks, I was going to China.
Just like that, 2 weeks.
Yep.
And how long do you have to prepare for your trip to China?
I had a few months. I probably started the application process in April, and then was like accepted by May. And then, I had the whole summer because I needed to be ready and working at the school on September the 4th. And so I think I got there a week early just to kind of get acclimated. But I had a good 4 months to get ready and tell everybody about what I was doing, which was mostly, I have no idea.
And that was like at the end of the freshman year in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yep. So that like you just kind of decided to take a gap year.
Yeah, kind of. Wow, that sounds exciting. I really don't know much about China at all. So let's go.
So that was kind of a random cost, right? It's just like if anyone come to you and give you some like a application to another country, will you be still interested?
I don't know. There was something about the way he was talking about it that, my heart just like responded to it. Like he was just talking about it and I was like, wow, that sounds so interesting. And someone who was from the same university and had gone to China and was connected with these people came to visit the class. And, his story was so invigorating, and actually we're really good friends now. And so it was just really cool to hear his story as well as the stories that my professor told about his daughter and her family over there.
And I think your experience is so crucial because right now a lot of American, they're looking for opportunity to teach ESL either online or in a different country in Asia. So then could you tell us a little bit more about like when and what and how long you were there and what exactly you did?
Yeah, so I got there in August 2017. Yes, August 2017. And I was working in a kindergarten as an intern, just teaching English classes. And so I would usually teach the 30-minute segments of English classes, which with children transitioning in and out was usually only 25 minutes. Trained in a lot of different methods. From the head of curriculum was the daughter of this professor that I mentioned. And so she was the one who was training me. Ebeth was her name. And so Yeah, she was a really great mentor. She attended Moody Bible Institute for ESL and had taught in Chinese colleges for a while. When she and another friend, along with a couple other people they roped in, decided to start this school. Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. When I wasn't teaching, I was probably outside playing with the kids or inside playing with the kids, and I just got to really connect with them, both personally and as their teacher. And I was originally supposed to stay there for one semester and leave in January. But then in November, I overheard Eber talking with the principal saying how they didn't really have interns for next year. And I thought, why don't I stay? And I was trying to communicate with my advisor back at college to like get the new classes in. But for some reason, the emails just weren't going through, or he wasn't getting them. I still don't know what happened, but just no response from him. So I was like, okay, that's a sign that I should stay. So I just went in. I was like, so what would you say if I wanted to stay another semester? She'd be like, yes.
That is so cool.
So I ended up staying. It was supposed to be 4 months, and I stayed for 11.
Yeah, it must be fun. So that's why like you want to stay.
Yeah, I loved
Yeah.
it. My coworkers were great, and the kids were great, and I remember getting out of bed and being like, I get to go to work today.
What kind of school was that? Was it like a private one or a public school or like a after school institute?
It was actually a combination of a private school and an after-school program, because public school in China doesn't start till first grade. So we were doing kindergarten and what in America we call preschool, and I was teaching kids age 2 through 6 normally during the day. And then about 6 months in, I started doing some after-school classes, and I actually got to pick the topics that I taught. And so I did a baking/crafting class where we did just crafts and different types of baking in English. So it was English instruction through more fun topic of baking and making crafts. And then I also had an acting class, and we did the 3 Billy Goats Gruff, and they were amazing. Those
Yeah.
kids were probably in 6th grade and 7th grade. And then I did actually an adult English class as well. And it was a lot of the parents of the kids at the school, and we just chatted, and I asked them about their families and their experiences in America, and yeah.
Wow. I think there is a general eager or interest of learning English across the whole Asia. And then whoever can teach, like just kind of receive a huge welcome. It's like almost like a treasure among a community. Is like we're gonna practice English with you.
Yep. Many times in public, parents would go send their kids to talk to the Laoshers, and they didn't know us, but they just assumed that we were teachers, which for me was true. For my other friends, not so much. But yeah, and they would say, "Go talk with the foreigners in English." We'd be like, "Hi, nice to meet you." Yeah, because they learn English in like school, like we would learn Spanish or French in our American high schools. So
That's right. Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of
But
the kids are at least familiar.
you guys probably were not pushed to talk to any Latino or other foreign people.
No, no, my mom was never like, oh, look, a Latino person, go talk to them in Spanish.
That would be considered a bit rude, huh?
I know, it would
Yeah,
be. I mean, I didn't consider it rude, but probably other people might have thought
yeah.
it a little rude. But I was mostly worried about the kids because they were like really nervous about talking to strangers. And I'm like, you don't have to talk to me if you don't want to.
I know. Yeah, yeah. I've encountered that kind of experience too. It's just like when the parents know that I also teach English before, and they were like, so they would drag their kids. It's like, oh, talk to 老师, like she speaks very good English, and I'm like, I'm not sure. And always the kids were super shy and embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
you talked about baking classes and acting or drama classes. That sounds really fun. And I think you put a lot of creativity in the whole lesson design. And
Yeah, that was
yeah,
one of the things I got to learn because I had only been in school for 1 year for an education degree. And so I hadn't had a ton of experience lesson planning. But in that year, I planned a lot of lessons because most days I was teaching 2 to 3 classes at least. And so there was a lot that I had to learn kind of on the fly and, ask for tidbits here and there, observe other teachers and kind of borrow or steal little things that they used.
Yep. You borrow, steal, and create your own eventually. Yeah. What was the things that you remember the most and why?
What I remember most about just my whole experience in Guangzhou is just like how laid back it was there, and it felt comfortable. One of my American friends and I would joke that Guangzhou is like the Texas of China because it's like laid back and the whole pace of life is slower and you talk to random strangers on the street and yeah, I remember feeling very comfortable being there and like once I got familiar with the main streets, I would see if I could walk down alleyways for shortcuts and like I was never worried when I was out and about. Like I never felt not safe, and so it just felt like home.
And you just linked your response right into the next question because I was wondering like why you like Guangzhou so much. You just mentioned that it's so relaxing, and as an international student, I don't know about Texas that much, but I know that they have a different accent. and is that also similar in Guangzhou?
Yeah, I could definitely tell the people that were from Guangzhou, who were originally Cantonese speakers and probably learned Mandarin at school, because they do kind of have an accent. And when I came back to the U.S. and started taking like language classes and learning proper Beijinghua, people asked me, "Where did you learn Chinese? Your accent's so funny." And I was like, "In Guangzhou," and they were like, "Ah, that makes sense."
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely have. They use a lot of different. The vowel sounds are slightly different, and that's just what I could observe and hear from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they also they like to comment on you even if when they think you're not listening. And I was like, I didn't understand 100% of what you said, but I know that you're talking about my hair, like for some reason.
Oh, and do
And
they
it was
ask
just funny,
you?
like
Yeah.
sometimes they would, or sometimes they'd be talking to each other, and one of them would ask me, and then I'd answer, and then they would talk again.
They just like occasionally check on you. It's like, are you still in the loop?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So as far as I know, in Guangzhou, a lot of people speak Cantonese. And was that the case for you? Like when you were working there, what do the parents and students speak and the local teachers as well?
Most everyone that I communicated with spoke both Mandarin and English, actually. Because it was a private school, it did cost, it had a pretty high tuition. So most of the parents were business owners of some sort and had some English exposure. And since Guangzhou is actually a very international city, it's both international with people from different countries and also just very diverse in the people from China who all like go to Guangzhou for the many job opportunities. And so there was people from all over there, and it was cool being like, so you're from this province and you're from this province and you're from this province. Yeah, and it was fun seeing them all like come communicate. And there was a couple like groups of teachers who could speak Cantonese, and so they would like teach single phrases in Cantonese, and some of the students even were Cantonese speakers as well. And so it's fun picking up different like little things.
Yeah.
From
What
that.
did you pick up? Must be something funny, right?
Yeah. Well, I learned that there is 2 ways to say thank you. There's like, oh, thank you for picking up that thing I dropped, and oh, thank you for saving my child from the runaway train.
Yes.
And yeah, so just that. And then on the metro, they would like read off the names of the stops in Mandarin and then Cantonese. And so I'd always joke that we'd get off at Tayok Silo, with the T Shilu, just the Arena Complex stop, and they'd be like, "What Cantonese do you speak?" And I was like, "Well, when we go into town, we stop at the Tayok Silo. Like, and then they would laugh.
Yeah, that's just something so funny because like when I was in India, like even here in Colorado as well, like the train because the announcement is so clear and slow and so structured, then I turn out to remember some of the phrases instead of the things I learned in class.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems like the same for you. That's so cool. And
Yeah.
and like I just feel like you had so much of the ease of living in Guangzhou. Was there any culture shock?
Um, no, honestly, I just kind of started living there and felt, wow, I really fit in here. I didn't really go in with many expectations, which is probably what saved me, that I was like, I really have no idea what I'm getting into, and I didn't really know much about China. And the only Chinese I knew was 谢谢. But that was it. That was
That
the Chinese I knew when I got off the plane.
that is
Um,
so useful.
and yeah, like the person who came to pick me up from the airport, they were having like a community dinner that evening, and she was like, do you want to go get fruit? And I was like, okay. So we rode our bikes without helmets or any sort of protection, which was new to me as an American
Yeah.
suburban raised person. Be like
Yeah.
just riding through the streets in among cars to go get fruit, and it was crazy and eye-opening. And I was like, I got off the plane about an hour ago, and
Yeah.
now I'm here doing this. And,
Like an actual bicycle, not like the
mhm.
scooter motorcycle kind.
Yeah, an actual bicycle.
What? That is so cool. And then you were not scared at all.
Um, no, I don't know. I was not scared, and I just decided I wanted to try everything and be like, I'm gonna try this today. And I think about a week in, I told one of my roommates, I'm going to the grocery store by myself. If I'm not back in an hour, send out a search party.
And and you didn't have a mobile phone?
Oh, I did. They quickly set me up with a Chinese so I could call people if necessary. But I was like, I wanted to see if I could find my way there and back on my own because I'd been taken there a few times.
Sounds
But
like you're very adventurous and you just fit right in. It's like, and maybe that's how it is easy because you don't have that much of an expectation. You probably don't even know how to expect. And then it's like
mhm.
whatever happens, well, I'm just gonna follow the flow.
Yeah, I was like, I guess that's how it is.
Yeah. That is so cool. And then so then that leads to the next question. I'm interested to know like once that when we were chatting and you mentioned that you actually feel you fit better in the Chinese culture and why so? Like is there any specific thing that you kind of connect the most or is there any incident happen or reason?
Yeah, so I really liked the community-based mindset and how important like people are. Got to know a lot of the people that I like buy my groceries from, and talk with them, and that was a new experience for me, is knowing the people who serve you your food and like sell you their vegetables and stuff. And there was a fruit lady, and her stall was pretty far away to walk. There was a lot of stalls in between us and her, but oftentimes most stall we would go and see her just because she was our friend and we wanted to talk with her. And almost every time she'd be like, have you tried this fruit? And I'd look at it and be like, I have never seen that in my life, no. And she'd be like, I'm gonna let you have one. And so she'd toss one in so I could try it. And
That is so cool and so
yeah, nice to know
friendly.
yeah.
You build a bond between the locals and your team.
Yeah, and there was a family that owned a Lanzhou Lamian restaurant. That was probably 3 minutes walk from where we lived, and so we'd go eat there a lot because it was amazing food and great people. But then they moved their store. In time, we all piled into a taxi cab and took a 1.5 hour taxi ride out to see them, and just had dinner and caught up. Oh, that was really fun. They invited us to stay the night, and they did the thing where they ask us and we say no, and then they ask again and we said no, no. Then they asked the third time, we're like, well, they really want us to stay with them. It was really sweet, like just having that connection. And then it was kind of weird coming back to the United States and being like, wait, I don't talk with the cashier when I'm checking out.
Yeah, probably just how are you?
Yeah, more than that, and they think I'm a little weird.
So like, huh? Like, I've never thought about that this way. Like, from you as an American and coming to the eastern side of the world, and you started building that relationship with locals or having that kind of, almost like I felt that it's almost like an insider joke that
Mhm.
you can actually talk to your crew about it, and then it's like that lady will know, that uncle will know, but no one else will know. So then
Mhm.
that connection makes you feel that like you fit in a lot better in Chinese culture.
Yeah, there was a water sales guy who he just delivered the bottles of water to the dispensers. One commented on my hat, a cool hat, and I'm like, thanks. And then every time after that, when I passed, I would wave, and we became really good friends from say, hey, I like your hat. And he would see me when I like driving around on his little cart, and I would be like, hello, friend. And yep, he was probably a 60-year-old. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I loved that like connection. When I left my home, I could like interact with people I cared about.
Do you receive any kind of like they probably just like you because you're from a different country?
Hmm.
Or what was that sentiment that you perceived?
I definitely knew that I got more attention, and sometimes it was negative and guys saying not so nice things at me, but then oftentimes it would just be people saying like, "Look at the foreigner, she's red hair," um,
Yep,
which I
just
usually didn't mind.
yeah, because you look
Yeah.
very different. Yeah. So
Yeah.
just those little things that wow. So I'm trying to just connect the dots into a bigger picture. I felt that there was just very genuine interaction that you had with the local people, and they kind of just show their authentic care to you and make you feel that you can connect with them.
Hmm.
Then I'm also curious, like, what kind of American culture you don't like and you don't fit in well?
I think I had rock coming. Actually, I learned about this in one of education classes, and it's called the U curve, which is the process someone goes through when entering a new country. The U curve theory, where go through the process and adjust, but then have to come back to their country to adjust again. And I had a much steeper curve on on the way back because like couldn't go out to the store and like meet my friends who worked there, and it seemed like severely unconnected coming back. Yeah, speed that everything has to be done. And yeah, it was just a little jarring being like, oh, life here is about time and we value time and don't waste my time. And yeah, like you can't really walk to the grocery stores here because they're just too far away.
The distance and the time that you mentioned. And that got me thinking, like, yeah, it is true. Like, here in the US, it's more, like, from my perspective, I feel it's more structured, that everything is kind of set up, but there is a lot more flexibility in Guangzhou from what you said. And
Mm-hmm.
the time could be, we could be late, we probably don't need to worry that much about how people think about us when we're late.
Yeah, so often I'd be out running errands and I'd run into somebody, you want to get dinner? And I'd be like, okay, that's cool. Like, and it just the being able to, change your plans because there's someone here and there's a person, and or like planning on going out to one restaurant, but then on the way you see your friend eating at a different restaurant. So like, okay, I guess we'll eat here. And
Like the flexibility.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot more flexibility there. And
Wow, that got me thinking as well. I mean, it's like because I'm from that kind of culture, so I never imagine how the life will be different for a local person, or for an international person coming in. So thank you for sharing those stories with us. And
yeah.
so then we're transitioning to the next segment is that I am interested to know about your language learning process. I'm pretty sure that you learned some Mandarin, or even,
Mhm.
well, you already mentioned Cantonese in Guangzhou. Was there anything interesting?
What I really loved is the stuff I just picked up from like hearing it. And I think within like a couple months, like there was, commands that the teachers would give to the kids, like line up and please sit down and okay, let's get our shoes on, and like just picking up things like that from the repetition and And then oftentimes, if I had the free time, I would sit in on the Chinese classes because at the school they had Chinese and English classes, which is good because they're 2 years old. They're still learning Chinese. They're still learning their own language. So I would sit in and I'd be like, wow, I'm learning stuff too.
I know, and there's a lot of repetition for the 2-year-olds, right?
I know, and it worked great for me because I was
Yeah.
like, I know this.
Yeah, that definitely helped our ego when we're learning a new language.
Yeah.
And and so like you did you learn it for the whole year or is like after a few months and then you started learning?
It was very basic, just like listening and picking things up for the first couple months. But then after 4 months, I was like, I want to learn this language. Like I understand it and it makes sense to me. And so I really started like actively listening. And one of my coworkers was really fluent in Mandarin because he had learned it from 7th grade through college. And so he was excellent at Mandarin. And so I would like say, hey, if you hear something that I say is wrong, will you please correct me? And he just knew that if he heard it wrong, he would just like quietly correct me. And then I could decide whether or not I was going to say it again. But yeah, he was really helpful. I'd be like, how would you say that? Or was I right in thinking that they said this, you know? So it's nice having him around to learn from.
Yeah, definitely. I think someone is next to you is always helpful. And then they have probably maybe not just one step ahead of you, but like still they kind of went through the same process and
Mm-hmm.
they kind of know how to correct you
Yeah,
in a
and they know
subtle
how
way.
to explain it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they're like, I had to learn this too. And so one of my favorite lessons is learning how to make the E vowel sound.
Yeah.
And my teacher said, all right, make an E sound like E with your mouth, and then close your lips as if you're making an O. So it's like E.
The U sound. That's
Yep.
right.
And
Yeah,
then
so
she's like,
yeah.
just start with that. And then once you get there, now I can just make it without having to think E and then O and then.
And then pronounce yu. That's right. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. I remember like when I was teaching, like so many students had a problem with that sound, the yu sound, because they will be saying like ooh. Then
Mhm.
I'm like, I think your tongue is just like dislocated, but
Yeah. There's that really specific tongue placement where it's like kind of hovering in the middle of your mouth.
yeah. And that's the thing that you guys, when you're learning a second language or even third or fourth, like you guys can actually explain a lot better than a native speaker like me.
Hmm.
So that was a huge difference in your one gap year in Guangzhou. And then after that, you moved back to Colorado.
Hmm.
I know that in the first, like in your freshman year and the sophomore year, you are not in the same college.
Yes, yeah. So I spent my first year at Colorado Christian University, and where I learned from Dr. Mitchell, world geography, and then transferred to CU Denver after I decided I wanted to pursue Chinese as a language. There aren't very many colleges that offer Chinese language study, and so CU seemed like the best option because they also then had the culturally and linguistically diverse education major that I could add on to that. And originally I was just studying basic elementary education,
Hmm.
which I liked, but I really wanted that more specific training. And so I did decide to transfer to CU in order to get a more detailed education.
You major in what was the major again? Culturally and linguistically
Diverse education.
diverse education. So that's
Yep.
focused on K to 12?
Yeah, it's not really focused on any particular age, but mostly how do we take the students' own background, like their culture and their home language, and sometimes even their gender and somewhat age specific. Like how do we take the students' background and then teach them? So it's pretty much how to teach any student ever is what we're trying to train to do. Um,
Could you give me an example, like how would traditional pedagogy will be, and then how different when you learn about how to teach culturally and linguistically diverse children?
when lesson planning, it mostly comes down to like what examples you use because you want to teach the same content because though there are standards and just things that kids and students need to know, and so you take this. It's like I want to teach them how to use contractions. So it's like, how can I do that? How can I teach contractions to these students? And so you kind of think about where your students come from, like, and they mostly thought of like mixed demographics, where some of them are Latino or Latina, and some of them are Black, and some of them are Asian, and some of them are white. It's like, how do you take all of their backgrounds into account when teaching? And so it's mostly about incorporating the idea of like contractions and using resources and materials that they are familiar with. So like taking a Spanish song, because I know that sometimes Spanish uses contractions, not as often as English, but they can. And so they're taking a Spanish song that uses them, and they're already familiar with that word being like, oh, that word is contracted. And so then doing a different English song, an English song that uses contractions as well. And so then they can say, oh, just like that word was contracted, that's what we're doing here. And so it just kind of taking what they already know and their background, and then pulling out the information in order to reapply it and then add to it.
I think you did a great job on concluding that whole concept, because like I will be taking this course like next quarter, and then I have no idea, and but you just said that you kind of build on the existing knowledge and then build on that, and then lay it as a foundation, and then you add a little bit more for kids with different backgrounds or different cultures that they can relate more, and then it'll be easier for them to learn.
Yeah, like when I was back in China, when I was planning my like my baking classes, I had to think, all right, a lot of Chinese kitchens don't have traditional ovens. I wanted them to have recipes that they could make again at home. And so I didn't want to like go to the foreign food store and buy the super specific baking needs, because not all the kids have access to that. So it's like I wanted to go to the local grocery store and find the things I needed. Maybe bring in, you know, something else like vanilla extract was kind of hard to find, and like teach them from that perspective. And I knew just from previous classes with them concepts they already knew. Like they understood the process of like making baozi. And since I knew that they knew how to like mix flour and water, and how you mix the dry ingredients first and then add the water, just because it makes baking easier. And so because I knew that, I could then skip over that part in the lesson, because it's like they knew that. I didn't have to teach them that. And then we could learn more deeper things like egg washing. That was kind of new to a lot of them. And they were, just building off of what they already knew and what I had observed from, you know, the culture of baking in China, and what I could add to that through this baking class and learning to make pretzels.
I love it. I love the way that you actually thought about, like, you know, not every Chinese family will have an oven or these different ingredients, but you kind of take something local. And that is just wonderful, because like that kind of says that you are culturally sensitive and you want to create a lesson plan around the needs of your students. And that's just beautiful.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And that's
Yeah.
essentially what my degree was about, is like look at the student first and their background, and then figure out what you still need to teach them. Because I know a lot of times that teachers would assume that kids of a different race or even a different language background just don't know things because they can't. Or even like with African American students, how their communication is different, and so they might not be able to explain the same concepts in a way that a white student would. And so one seems smarter than the other, even though they both know the same knowledge. And so it's mostly about like try and figure out how to exhibit what the kids know already.
More of like a student-centered approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You said that it's easier for you to remember Chinese characters. Why?
This is kind of funny because I did language all through high school, and I kind of hated it. It was so hard for me. Not knocking my teacher, but just I am not good with words because I'm dyslexic, and so I would mix up things all the time, and I just couldn't get in. I'd read words incorrectly because, you know, I'm not used to seeing them, and they're not like sight words for me, and when it's Spanish, and it was kind of a nightmare, and I hated it.
Can you explain a little bit how is it like to be dyslexic?
It's mostly just that when I see words, my brain will like mix up some of the letters, and so reading aloud was always really hard for me, because then I would have to
like focus really
hard. And so I usually read pretty slow out loud. And it also affects my typing. I'm a horrible typer because I mix up the letters, even in my fingers. And spell check is a lifesaver because, like, even though if you asked me to spell that word, I could spell it. It's just when I'm typing, it does not come out the way I would like it to. And so the reason I like Chinese is because there's no letters.
That's right.
At least in, except for pinyin. And even in pinyin, I mix things up, like, duo and do. Like I would, if I'm reading pinyin, I will mix those up because I'm dyslexic. But with the characters, I guess it's just a different part of my brain that sees pictures instead of letters. And that each picture has like a semantic meaning or a phonetic meaning. And so it more easily translates in my head.
So from what you said, I understood that you said that if you're being dyslexic, that it's like the letters will be flying in a way?
Not really flying, just like when I see them, they're in a different order than they should be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
And it comes out in my writing as well, where I will misspell words that I know how to spell.
Yeah.
It's because when I was writing it, it looked right. Yeah. Oh. And even like I'll go look back at it again, 10 minutes after I've written it and see the error.
Yeah.
And, not realizing that I had made it in the beginning.
Got it. Okay. So it's kind of like almost registered in your brain.
Yeah, it's just what my brain is telling me.
Then so in the process of learning Mandarin, like, is there a moment that you felt that, oh, my Mandarin is progressing?
Yeah, there was a couple moments. The first one is I would go and sit in on the staff meetings, the Chinese staff meetings, just to, get more exposure to it. And, this was stuff I already understood because it was my workplace. And so I understood what we were talking about. But then I could just observe Mandarin being spoken. And someone made a joke about someone's hair. And I laughed along with everyone else because I understood the joke. And I was like, oh, I understood that joke.
I know.
Like, and it was just as quickly as if it was in English. And it was funny that other teachers looked at me and they were like, did you understand? And I was like, I did.
I know that feeling. Like I had the same experience with Hindi, but like it took me so long and then I finally kind of got it. And then it's like by the gesture, by the context, by people's like tone, we kind of get it. That felt super awesome.
Yeah, I think especially for me because it was like I was connecting with people as well. It's like because I understood the joke, I was then a part of the people, the group, and so I really enjoyed that. And then also, like even with sometimes hearing just people talk, and it's a word I've never heard before. But because it's like made up of other words, like I think I was at your house one time and you told your brother to put it in the kaoxiang.
Yes.
And I was like,
the oven
it's the oven.
Yeah.
And I just knew that. And like when I figured that out, because I had never heard the word oven before, but when you said it, I was like, I know that word.
Yeah.
Like, so just when I get to hear those things, I was like, it's getting better.
I know. And well, just for the listeners, let's put a note over here. So 烤箱 oven, 烤 it means to bake, and 箱 is a box.
Yeah.
So in Mandarin, it's just basically a baking box.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I had known that cow, like you cow your food when you're cooking it, like on the stove and stuff. And so I knew that verb. And then I knew that 冰箱 is a fridge because it's a cold box.
Yep.
Ice and box. So I was like, oh, it's a kaoxiang, of course. It's an oven. Like
all of a sudden, an epiphany just came out.
Exactly. Yeah, one of a very wise person once told me that Mandarin is like climbing a mountain. You work really, really hard to get to the top, and then the rest of it just kind of falls into place as you go down the other side. And that's kind of like how you learn random new words like kaoxiang.
Yeah, and that's just a great quote. I meant to ask you what will be your tip and advice for those people who want to learn Mandarin or even become an ESL teacher in China. Like, what are your tips for them?
I think one of the ones that I was more ready for with Chinese is just the relativity of things, especially with time, and how people don't necessarily specifically say when something happened. And it doesn't really matter, which to us, it'd be like, going to the store. It's like, well, when did you go to the store? It's like, it doesn't matter because the story, doesn't need time. But in the English, we'd be very specific. I went to the store. And so just like being ready for the relativity of time, and then also just the definitions of words where it's like, well, in general, it could also mean this, or in different contexts, this.
So be tolerant of the blurriness. Can we say
Yeah,
that?
yeah. But I think that's one of the beautiful parts of Mandarin is that because these things can mean different things, their concepts are more connected because for me, it was like less to learn because if you just learn one thing and then add little bits of meaning to it, then you can understand how this word is connected to this word is connected to this word.
So give it time and give yourself some break and tolerance of not knowing and not
Mm-hmm.
understanding. It sounds like a great tip.
A
What's the
lot
name
of
of it?
listening in, like going to staff meetings that you don't understand until you understand them.
Well, just struggle through, right? Like, and then
Mm-hmm.
you will get better before you go like go down again.
Yeah, and I
That's
would I would eavesdrop on other people's conversations to see if I could understand what they were saying.
all right. Well, this is Katelyns conclusion and tip. Eavesdrop.
Eavesdrop.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing today. I mean, we talked two different general topics, and then you brought so much of your voices and stories to us. And I'm pretty sure that whoever is interested in ESL teachers, or even just being interested in languages in general, will benefit from your stories. Thank you, Katelyn.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Thanks for listening to Chai with Ping. Let us hear your voices and stories. Please share this episode, like and follow us on Instagram at Chai with Ping. You can also email us at chaiwithping@gmail.com. Till next time.